Welcome to episode 760 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Bob Loddick from Seed Time, and I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to grow your money like a seed is key to learning God's way of handling money. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mater.
Because you're looking for creating a relationship where people look at you and they go, this is worth way more than I paid. I've gotten more value than I gave you. That's a servant mindset. That means you're really viewing money as the result and the promise and the recognition.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in yourself through stewarding your treasures, I talk with you about why I consider money a certificate of appreciation, what it means to be paid or to pay for something, and why this idea, this focus, lets you keep a servant mindset first. As we talk about stewarding your treasures, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without costing yourself an extra dime? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show. If you enjoy the show when you're ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. Rabbi Daniel Lapin, in one of his books, talks a little bit about how money is a certificate of appreciation or a certificate of performance. This idea that whatever you pay for something or you are paid for something, it's a mark of a value exchange. It's you indicating that this product or this service that I've gotten or that I've given to someone else is worth something of value. And therefore, they give you something of value. If you think about it, it's really just like barter. If somebody comes up and says, I've got a pig and you've got a cow, and when we slaughter them, we're going to exchange some of the meat, and that way we both end up with a little bit of both. It's the same idea. But philosophically, we start to view money differently. We start to look at money as the outcome. We look at money as the thing that we're after, is money is the goal as opposed to the result of having done your goal. The interesting thing is when you begin to recognize it as a performance certificate or an appreciation certificate, that when you're paid for something or you pay for something, it's about recognizing that there's been an exchange of value. It's about this soul idea or this mental idea or this view that the money is simply the recognition of the value. So instead of the money being the goal, the money is the result. The money isn't the cause, it's the result. The money comes from doing things that matter, providing services of value, providing products of value, and this sort of thing. The reason that's so important, I think, is because of the mindset that allows us to have. See, one of the struggles that I think we have, and it doesn't matter if you're in business or if you just go to businesses and use them, is the idea of the servant mindset, the idea that the business is there to serve. And I want to be clear, this isn't the same as saying, quote, the customer is always right, because that's absolutely not true. You know what? Sometimes the customer is actually wrong. But the truth is, if you are providing something of value for someone else because it's valuable for them, this is again back to that idea of influence versus manipulation. if I'm influencing you to do something that is good for you, whether or not it's good for me doesn't matter. But if I'm manipulating you, I'm looking to get you to do things that are good for me, and whether or not it's good for you doesn't matter. And when you think about it, you've seen that happen. You've spent money on something and then discovered that it really wasn't worth the value that you spent. You've been disappointed or frustrated or mad at yourself or afraid or whatever emotion you were feeling, but you looked at it and you were like, this value exchange, I gave way too much money for this. This isn't worth what I spent. This is a horrible product. It's a lemon. Whatever expression you use, and you've looked down and you've been frustrated by that, and that emotion is because that was actually a manipulative exchange. There wasn't really a equal exchange of value, or at least the perception of that wasn't there. And sometimes that's because you as the buyer didn't perceive it right, but more often than not, it's because the seller either didn't present the situation correctly or sold you something that you really didn't need or didn't want, but they manipulated you into the purchase, or they overpromised and underdelivered. If you have a servant mindset, then you're always going to look to over-deliver and under-promise. Do it the opposite way. Because you're looking for creating a relationship where people look at you and they go, this is worth way more than I paid. I've gotten more value than I gave you. That's a servant mindset. That means you're really viewing money as the result and the promise and the recognition of appreciation and performance. And when that happens, when that works, it's a pleasure. Think about it. Again, you've bought products or you sold products where in truth you were like, I would have paid 5 times or 10 times or 100 times what this was because it's tremendously delivered value. It's given me so much more value than I spent for it. And I am happy with it beyond belief. And I would happily give money again or continue to give money. That's why people have loyalty to brands and to services and to products, because they appreciate the value they give them. And that is a mindset. When we look at it that way, when we look to see what is it in our life that really gives us that kind of value, those are the places we want to put our money. And then if you're a business owner, how can you create relationships with your clients and your customers that create that kind of emotion in them? And when that works both ways, then it's a pleasure to do business instead of a pain. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of treasures, you can sign up for our treasures tips by going to inspiredstewardship.com/treasures or text in the U.S. 44222 treasures tips. And we'll send you 5 weeks of our best tips on stewarding your treasures. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.